Hello and a very warm welcome to the virtual Home Building and Renovating Autumn Show. The session that you're about to join us for is sponsored by RIBA, our headline sponsor, and it's about finding and working with an architect. I'll hand you over to our expert in a moment, but first of all, I just wanted to let you know about our Ask the Experts chat room. Now, RIBA is going to be putting architects in there throughout the live show, so if you've got any burning questions, please do head to that chat room and ask them your questions. And don't forget to take a look at the exhibition hall as well. Right, without further ado, here's our talk on finding and working with an architect.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. It's wonderful to join everybody here on this virtual event for the Homebuilding Renovating Show. So I'm going to be talking to you today about architects and about how to find and how to work with an architect, which is a question that I'm asked frequently from both clients, friends, and pretty much anybody who's thinking of doing any works in their house. So I have a lot of experience answering this question, so I hope I can shed some light on it for you all. So before we go into how to find an architect and how to work with one, I guess the most important question to answer is, why use an architect? In my experience, a lot of people who are embarking on renovation projects or build projects, they may think that, well, do I need an architect? I may need some drawings, but I'd get some done. But further than that, why do I need an architect? What do I need them for? So this slide is just all about, why would you want to work with an architect? Now, one of the things to remember is that architects are one of the most highly trained professions around. I mean, they study for 7 years, and they are trained in pretty much everything that you can think of regarding your building project. So they're not there just to produce some very pretty plans or drawings for you, although that is a part of their job. They offer services which cover the entire construction process, and they're there to help you navigate your way through your build. And actually, using a good architect in particular will help you maximize the return in your investment or on your investment. So in other words, by instructing an architect, what that will enable you to do is get the best value for money for your project. You can make sure that you get what you need in terms of design. So they'll make sure that if your space, however big, however small, fits the purpose. And past the design and past the planning stage, which are there's two stages that most people associate architects with, but past that, what they will do is help you manage the job. So they will help you mitigate the construction risk. Now, unfortunately, we've all heard those stories of construction projects going wrong. And in my experience, and I'm not an architect, I am a construction expert, so I ran a contracting company, and a lot of the work we did, we'd go into people's houses or go into projects that had gone wrong, and about 80% of those would not have gone wrong if the client had used an architect all the way through. Another important thing to remember is an architect is somebody that you should consult, whether it's a big or small project. Now, a lot of people may think, well, I'm doing a small project, so I don't need an architect. My answer to that question is, you probably need them more than you think, because in a smaller project, it's even more important that you get your design right, you get things wrong. There's less margin of error in a smaller space, and actually the value that an architect, or the value that good design can give you, or the value you can get from good design in a smaller space is, in my opinion, actually probably more than in bigger spaces. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an understanding of why you might want to use an architect. So, well, what is an architect? I mean, I think we all know, but do we though? So an architect is a protected term, and that means that only somebody who is trained in the correct way and registered with someone like the RIBA can call themselves an architect. It requires years of specialist training, and they are experts in designing, planning, and overseeing construction projects. Now, remember that the word architect is a protected term. However, that is the only protected term. So things like architectural design and other variations of the word architect don't necessarily mean that you're getting the same level of service as the word architect. So just remember that. And the Royal Institute of British Architects, or the RIBA, was formed in 1834 and is the UK's most recognised registration body for architects. So if you want an architect, that is probably the first place to go. And they, on their website, which is architecture.com, they will be able to give you all the advice that you need in order to make sure that you are dealing with an architect. So just remember, make sure that you are actually dealing with an architect, and the RIBA is the first place to go if you want to make sure of that. Now, how do you find an architect? Well, of course, there's lots of ways to find architects using the internet or Google. However, the RIBA website has a really amazing service called Find an Architect, and you can find that at architecture.com. And it's very quick, and it's very easy to use, and it lists only qualified RIBA registered architects. Now, what it enables you to do is enter some details on the size of your project. So you can get architects that are skilled or have lots of experience in doing the size of your project, the type of services you might need. So, do you need planning services? Again, they can link you with architects that specialize in that. And also in terms of location, so where do you live, what's your area? Now that's important for two reasons. One is it's important because it is quite important, I feel, that you pick an architect who understands the area that you're living in, the architectural footprint of that area, but also from a planning perspective as well. It's important that they understand what you can and can't do, and it does vary from different areas. So the RIBA you give the RIBA on the website, on the Find an Architect's website, you enter all the details about your project and about you and about what you want, and they will come up with a shortlist. Now, if you want additional help, then you can speak to the RIBA Client Services team, who will talk you through that process, and again, are skilled in understanding what makes an architect right for a client and for a project, and they will help you to refine and create that shortlist for you. And remember that this service on the RIBA website is totally free, so that's fantastic. So that is I think the best way to find an architect, and the reason for that is mainly because at least you'll know, or you can be confident that you are being linked with a properly qualified and registered architect, so you're getting the right kind of service. Okay, so you've got your shortlist now. So how do you choose an architect? Well, much like you would choose any other service from any other sort of company, the first thing to probably do is to look at their previous projects and ask yourself, do you like those projects? Do you like the things that these architects have designed? Do you like the buildings? Do you like the spaces? Now, the next thing is, you may like them, but are they relevant to you? Are they relevant to your space, what you're trying to achieve? So you may look at an architect's portfolio and see, lots of countryside new build properties with vast spaces and open spaces. But if your project is a terraced house in South London, they may not be the best person for you. So it's important that you choose somebody whose work you like, and in some way that the work connects with you, you connect with the work. But it's also important you try and choose somebody who is relevant. The next thing to think about is the size of the projects that they work on. Are the size of the projects that the architects are working on similar to your project? So, for example, again, if you are trying to build or convert a barn in the countryside, but the architect that you're looking at has only done side returns and rear extensions, they may not be the person that you want to go with initially. That doesn't mean, that is not a de facto rule. Of course, there are lots of arguments, lots of compelling arguments actually, to choosing architects who may be a bit smaller, or maybe making that leap up to a bigger style of project. You'll probably get a lot more value for money. They'll certainly be very, very engaged with your project, because they will see it as a way of taking their practice in a certain direction. So there are a lot of clients that I know of who have used architects before, who hadn't necessarily done projects of their size and got fantastic, probably better results actually than they would have done had they gone with an architect of that size. But I think it's just something that you should bear in mind, and whichever way you choose to go, you can do that in confidence, because you know you're dealing with an actual qualified architect, and that's really important because they're held to quite high standards by the RIBA. So you'll, even if it's not something that they haven't done exactly in that scale before, you know that there's a methodology behind the way that they work, the way that they structure things, the way that they charge you, the way that they engage with you, and all of your subcontractors, if they're planning the entire works. You know that there's a methodology behind that you can trust, which is helping to guarantee success. And then think about, do you require any specialized services? Do you require planning? If you do, make sure that your architect has experience in that. Do you require interiors? Now, interiors are quite interesting because a lot of the time clients don't consider architects for interiors, but of course architects understand interiors, and they may actually be interior architects and who specialize in doing interiors. So if that's something that you're interested in, it's quite an important part of the job, one that gets overlooked, I think, and one, if you get it right, it really, you know, adds to the success of your project. So think about that. Do you need interiors? Think about whether that architect has experience in that. Sustainability, for example, as well. But there are lots of different things. So just look at your project, think about the specifics of your project, and try and match those with the architects if you can. Also, think about how big their practice is. Now, I have no preference or rule in terms of how big a practice should or shouldn't be. I think there are benefits with dealing with bigger practices in that you get access to more skills, you get access to more resource. But then there is, you know, a great benefit of dealing with a smaller practice because it's a more intimate service that you get. It feels there's a more direct connection sometimes with you and the architect, and you know that, you know, the person that you're talking to at the beginning is going to probably be the person that takes you all the way through the project. So that's more about trying to understand how big and small firms work and trying to figure out what's best for you and best for your project. And the final thing is visit their sites. They will have sites that are open. Go and have a look at them. See how a project looks and feels that they are running. Speak to their clients. Meet their clients if you can. That's really important. The relationship between the client and the architect is really, really important, because this is the person who, in effect, is trying to realize your dreams. So they take the things that you want to try and achieve and they translate those into, into an actual building. So it's really important that you get on with them. And actually, that's probably more important than any of the other things I've said before. And I think if you had an architect and you got on with them really, really well, it's probably more important that you get on with them than it is that they have expertise in planning, because you can always supplement those. But so that's really important. Meet them as many times as possible. I think you have that relationship between, and the best architects are the ones that, you know, take you on the journey with them. And I know a lot of clients who do jobs, and you know, they end up being really quite close friends with their architects, because, you know, designing someone's home is quite an intimate thing, and it's a really important part of the relationship, and one not to be overlooked. So, how do you get the best out of your architect? Well, one of the most important things you have to think about is the brief. Now, the brief is where you will effectively, the brief isn't just about saying to the architect, well, I want a big kitchen, or I want a small kitchen, or I want 3 bedrooms. The brief is about explaining to the architect how you live, how you want to use that space. And it's best that you're honest. So, for example, if you are not the tidiest person, or a person that enjoys cleaning or finds it easy to keep your house tidy, I'm like that. I'm not. Doesn't come natural to me. I walk in, I leave my coat somewhere, and I leave things lying around the house. If you're that kind of person, it's really important that you tell your architect that. And the reason for that is because the brief, the more honest you are in your brief, the better result you'll get, because a lot of the decisions that are made by the architect, and subsequent by, you know, who you choose to build and how you choose to build. All of those decisions will be based on your brief. And if your brief is in any way not quite accurate or not quite right, it's likely that at the end the results won't be as good as they could have been. So going back to that, you know, initial example, if you are like that, you say to your architect, "No, I just can't, you know, I'm really rubbish at, you know, putting my shoes away or something," yeah, then they will, their skills are about understanding that and making allowances for that. So they will build some pretty easy, cool, or interesting storage for you to put your shoes in, which is very simple for you to do. So there's no reason for you not to do that. So, and there's lots of, and that, those kind of examples go all the way through. So make sure that your brief is as comprehensive and as honest as possible, and take your time with this in this stage of the process. And a good architect will, it won't be, you know, the brief won't be just a kind of thing that you do once and then it's done. It'll be back and forth, and there'll be, you'll do part of it, or you'll do all of it, and then you'll come back and you might change some things. And the brief in itself won't change, but you may, your feelings about how that brief translates into a space may well change, and that's fine to do that. Except just remember that there is a point at which, you know, changes, if they can be avoided, should not be made, and your architect again will tell you that. And that's another great reason to use an architect. And, you know, work with your architect, but if you're not comfortable about anything, you know, let them know. I think sometimes there's a feeling that architects impress on people, you know, the architect's design ambition, and that's not true. Certainly that's not true of the best architects. But if there is something that you're not comfortable with, then please, you know, tell them and trust their advice, you know, and remember that, you know, they're held to really high standards by the RIBA. But whilst you're trusting their advice, still voice your opinion. And I always say to clients, you know, look, you know, voice your opinion, but take the advice of the architect. Now, advice and opinion are two different things, and sometimes they are confused, and it can not endanger, but it can make the process not as smooth as possible. So if you have an opinion about something, because you remember, there is no right and wrong when it comes to certain things about your home. You know, you've got to live there. And if you like a certain thing or you want it to be a certain way, then tell the architect that. They will find a way to make sure that they can deliver that for you in the right way. So, should you use an architect for the entire job? Now, a lot of people that I know will instruct an architect, ask them to design the building, produce the drawings, even take them through planning. But then after that, will effectively take the projects away from them and either give it to another project manager or directly to a builder. Now, there are a lot of builders out there offering, you know, a design and build service, which is fine. You know, I've done that before. My view, however, is that the architect will be the only person through the entire project who is solely looking after you. That's their job. Their job is to make sure that you get what you needed for the money that you've agreed in the time span that you wanted and at the quality that you require. So it's really, really important. And there are lots of, as I said earlier, I think, you know, lots of people think that architects draw pictures and drawings and that's the extent of what they do, but it's not. And it, you know, one of the key things they do is manage the construction process. So they can help you make sure that you, for example, produce a sturdy and robust pricing document. And that's really, 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 really key to the success of the project. If that is not right, if your pricing document is not right, you will find it very, very difficult to get prices that you from contractors, from builders that you can interrogate, so that you can look at them and see which is the best, which is the worst. And if you can't do that, then you'll probably make a bad decision, and you won't know at what point you know things have gone over budget. So that's really important. They'll also help you to with what we call your procurement. So they will help you choose the builder. So they'll help you And remember, architects have dealt with builders practically, and obviously have been trained in order to deal with the construction process. So they will be able to look at builders and pick up on things that aren't quite right, maybe that you wouldn't be able to do. And they'll be able to say, well, actually, even though builder X is a little bit more expensive, we know that they seem to be a company that's going to produce what you need. And that's that's really, really important, because that decision is probably the single most important decision that's going to dictate whether your project is a success or not. So they can help you do that. And then once you're in the project, they can help you with the procurements. They can normally get you better prices for materials. They can make sure that things run on time. They can project manage the whole job for you. They deal with the contract with your supply chain to make sure you've got secure and robust contracts in place. They will help you with payments. So they'll make sure that you are paying your supply chain fairly, correctly, at the right time, so that you're not at risk. Again, one of the big problems that happens with jobs is that people overpay builders, and then something goes wrong and they don't have enough money left to either get somebody else in or to finish the jobs. And then at the end, the architect will make sure that everything has been completed correctly, to building control in terms of the structure, but also in terms of the quality that you require. And they will do all of the stacking for you and all of the sign off. So all of that, even though there is an additional cost associated with keeping an architect on over the entire project, even with that additional cost, it will actually probably, in fact, definitely save you some money to keep the architect on, whether that means in terms of not overpaying or getting better prices for your materials, or making sure that stuff doesn't have to be redone. So it's really important that I think you should use your projects through. And as I said, an architect will, a project architect will guide you through the entire construction process. They'll help with pricing, procurement, instructing, managing your builders, dealing with payments and quality issues, and they'll add value to your job. So in the end, having a good architect on board for the entire job will save you money and make sure that you get the job that you really, really want. And I guess that's brought us to the end almost. And I think I picked three things that I think summarise the talk and about finding and using an architect. And I think, again, it's really important that people understand the benefits of working with an architect, because so many of my clients that I speak to don't. I can summarise those in three very quick ways. One, get the job you paid for. I mean, that's really, really important. So many clients don't, in the end, get what they actually paid for. And the architects, if you use them throughout the entire job, will be there to make sure that happens. Get the job for the price you agree. Now, we all, as I said earlier, we've all heard the horror stories. And again, a good architect will make sure that you have the right contracts in place, will make sure you have the right pricing documents, that you procure the job in the right way. All of those things will help to make sure that you get the job at a price that you've agreed. And probably one of the most important things is that it's at the quality level that you need. A lot of renovation projects, even big or small, are important projects because there are homes and the most important spaces. And it's important that it's done to the right quality, not just in terms of, for obvious reasons, for safety, things like building control, which can be not only dangerous but incredibly costly if they are not done correctly, but also the aesthetic, the way it looks, the way it feels, the design. And again, using an architect will make sure that you get all of those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kunle. Some brilliant advice there. And if you would like to speak to architects, interact with them, then head to our Ask the Architects chat room, which is sponsored by RIBA, where there's a whole panel of architects ready and raring to answer your questions. Thank you very much for watching this session. Do remember, all of our sessions will be available on demand after the show itself. But if you're watching live, then come back in another 15 minutes for another one of our live seminars. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again, Kunle. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you very much.